Back in my day, some cars weren't just fast, they were forbidden. The NHRA didn't ban them for cheating, they banned them because they were too damn good.
Back in the golden age of American muscle, when gas was cheap and freedom smelled like burning rubber, a few cars went too far. They weren't made for comfort, nor were they built for safety. They were built for one thing: to dominate. These machines didn't just win races, they scared the officials. Because when a car is too fast for the rulebook, that's when legends are born. The NHRA tried to stop them, but all they really did was make them immortal. These are the 5 muscle cars so dangerous and untamed that America's drag racing authority had to ban them. Welcome to Regal Rides, where we keep the old steel alive. One story at a time. Car number 1, 1964, Ford Thunderbolt, the monster NHRA tried to silence. The story begins in 1964, an era when drag racing wasn't just a weekend hobby, it was America's heartbeat. Every manufacturer was chasing one dream: to dominate the quarter-mile strip. But Ford built something far beyond that. They created a machine so wild, so brutally fast, that even the National Hot Rod Association, the NHRA, had to step in and say, "That's enough." That machine was called the 1964 Ford Thunderbolt. From a distance, it looked like an ordinary Fairlane, clean, boxy, almost polite. But under its hood, a storm was waiting to explode. Ford's engineers had stuffed a 7-liter, 427 cubic inch V8 engine under that simple body. The same engine that powered Ford's Le Mans winning race cars. And this wasn't your typical street setup. It was built for war. The Thunderbolt's massive 427 cubic inch high-riser V8 produced well over 600 horsepower. When properly tuned, numbers that were unheard of in the early 1960s. Ford used aluminum body panels, fiberglass hoods, plexiglass windows, and even deleted the sun visors and radio to save every ounce of weight. It wasn't built for comfort. It was built to destroy the quarter mile, and destroy it did. In its very first runs, the Thunderbolt was hitting the quarter mile in 10 to 11 seconds, leaving competitors completely humiliated. Chevrolet's big block Impalas and Mopar's early dragsters couldn't even keep up. The Thunderbolt was so dominant that Ford built only about 100 of them, all hand-assembled for professional drag racers. It was the definition of factory insanity. A car you could technically buy from a dealer, but had no business driving on public roads. It was loud, rough, and completely unforgiving. On launch, it could lift its front wheels clean off the ground. Drivers described it as trying to wrestle the tornado, and that's when the NHRA stepped in. The National Hot Rod Association realized that the Thunderbolt had completely broken the rules of stock drag racing. It was too fast, too light, and too purpose-built to be considered fair. Within a year, the NHRA reclassified it, effectively banning it from competing in most stock categories. Ford's dream car was suddenly too good for its own class, but the damage, or rather, the legend, was already done. Every racer, every mechanic, every teenage car kid in America knew the name Thunderbolt. It became the ultimate symbol of unfiltered power, proof that when engineers were let loose, they could build something that terrified even the rule makers. Today, only a handful of original Thunderbolts survive. Each one is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, not because of luxury or looks, but because it stands for something rare. An era when car companies weren't afraid to go too far. The 1964 Ford Thunderbolt wasn't just a car. It was a rebellion on wheels, a machine that proved speed could be too dangerous for the system. And when the NHRA tried to erase it, it didn't disappear. It became immortal, because legends don't fade. They just burn rubber into history. Car number 2, 1968. Hemi Dart Superstock, the factory-built rule breaker. By the late 1960s, the muscle car war had reached its boiling point. Dodge wasn't interested in building fast cars anymore. They wanted to build untouchable ones. And that's exactly what they did with the 1968 Hemi Dart Superstock, a car so raw, so dangerous, that it came with a warning label from the factory. This wasn't your everyday Dodge Dart. On the outside, it looked small, almost modest, like something you'd see parked outside a grocery store. But under that plain skin was one of the most extreme drag cars ever sold to the public. Dodge engineers had one mission: destroy the competition on the quarter-mile strip, no matter what it took. So they stripped the Dart down to its bones. Every single part that didn't make it faster was thrown out. Sound insulation, heaters, mirrors, even armrests. The windows, plexiglass. The front fenders, fiberglass. And under the hood sat an engine that should have been locked in a race shop, not sitting in a dealership. The 426 cubic inch Hemi V8 engine, the same powerhouse that ruled NASCAR, was wedged into the Dart's small frame. But it didn't fit easily. Mechanics had to hammer the engine bay just to make room. The result? A car that weighed less than 3,000 pounds and produced well over 500 horsepower in its drag-tuned form. That meant one thing: chaos. When the driver hit the throttle, the Dart didn't just move, it exploded forward. Its rear tires clawed at the pavement. The front wheels sometimes lifted off the ground, and the sound, that deep, roaring growl of a Hemi, could shake the air around you. It was the kind of car that separated drivers from dreamers. One wrong move, and it could spin out, flip, or burn rubber for hundreds of feet. The National Hot Rod Association, NHRA, took notice almost immediately. The 1968 Hemi Dart was entered into the superstock class, but it was so dominant that it became almost unfair to other competitors. Dodge's factory-backed teams were winning races left and right. The Dart was simply unstoppable. Soon, the NHRA had to step in. The rules were changed to restrict just how extreme a factory-built car could be. Certain modifications were banned and production quotas were introduced so that no company could build something this wild again in such small numbers. But Dodge didn't care. They had already made their point. The Hemi Dart had done its job. It terrified the NHRA, crushed the competition, and cemented its place in history as one of the most outrageous factory cars ever made. Even Dodge's own engineers admitted the car was too much for the streets. It was never meant for daily driving. There was no warranty, no comfort, no air conditioning, not even a proper back seat. It was pure, undiluted muscle. Today, an original 1968 Hemi Dart Superstock is one of the most valuable and sought-after mopars on the planet. Some have sold for more than $250,000, a small price to pay for a piece of outlaw history. This car wasn't banned because it cheated. It was banned because it changed the game. It forced the NHRA to rewrite its own rules. It showed that sometimes, when you give engineers total freedom, they'll build something even the law can't handle. The 1968 Hemi Dart wasn't just a car. It was a message written in tire smoke and thunder. If you want to stop us, you'll have to catch us first. Car number 3, 1969 Chevrolet Camaro, ZL1, the aluminum animal. The NHRA feared by 1969 the streets and drag strips of America had become a battlefield. Ford had the Boss, Dodge had the Hemi, and Chevrolet. They had a secret weapon that would shock everyone, a car so powerful and so rare that it made even the National Hot Rod Association nervous. Its name was the 1969 Chevrolet Camaro ZL1. At first glance, it looked like any other Camaro. Same sharp body lines, same low confidence stance, but under the hood was something no one expected. A full race engine made entirely of aluminum that was never meant for the streets. Chevrolet's engineers didn't build this car for everyday drivers. They built it to win. Hidden behind this masterpiece was a man named Fred Gibb, a small-town Chevrolet dealer and drag racer who had an idea that would rewrite history. He convinced Chevrolet to build a limited run of Camaros with their most powerful race engine, the ZL1. This engine was a 427 cubic inch, all-aluminum V8 designed strictly for professional racing. It weighed nearly 100 pounds less than a normal iron block, but produced around 550 horsepower in factory form, and tuners could easily push it past 600. That kind of power, in a car this light, was absolute madness. When the first ZL1 Camaros hit the drag strip, they blew everyone away. Quarter-mile times dropped into the low 11-second range, numbers that were reserved for purpose-built race cars. Competitors were stunned, and the NHRA immediately started asking questions. The problem? The Camaro ZL1 technically was a production car. You could walk into a dealership and order one, but only if you knew the secret code, COPO 9560. That stood for Central Office Production Order, a loophole Chevy engineers used to sneak race parts into street cars. Only 69 ZL1 Camaros were ever built, and each one was a grenade waiting to go off. The NHRA didn't like that one bit. This car completely unbalanced the competition. It was too light, too fast, and far too expensive, costing over $7,000 when a regular Camaro started at less than $3,000. Chevrolet's own salesmen struggled to sell them because most people didn't even know what they were looking at. But the racers knew, and that was enough. Soon, the NHRA began enforcing new rules that limited what could be classified as a stock production car. Cars like the ZL1, with exotic race engines and aluminum blocks, were effectively shut out. Once again, power had gone too far, and the rulebook had to change to catch up. But that didn't kill the legend. It made it stronger. The 1969 Camaro ZL1 became a symbol of what American engineering could achieve when it wasn't afraid to push limits. No other muscle car looked so ordinary yet carried so much fury under the hood. It was stealth and violence in perfect harmony. Today, a real ZL1 Camaro can sell for over $1 million, not just for its rarity, but for what it represents. The moment when Chevrolet said, "We'll build a street car that terrifies the NHRA." It was a car too advanced for its own time, a machine that didn't just win races. It changed how the world viewed muscle cars forever. Because while other cars played by the rules, the 1969 Camaro ZL1 rewrote them. It wasn't built to fit in. It was built to stand alone, loud, proud, and uncatchable. Car number 4, 1962, Plymouth Savoy, Ford 13 Superstock. The rule-breaker NHRA couldn't tame in the early 1960s. America's streets were roaring with power. Car companies were locked in a horsepower war, and Chrysler's engineers were quietly planning something outrageous. They didn't want to build a family sedan. They wanted to build a weapon. Out of that obsession came the 1962 Plymouth Savoy 413 Superstock, a car so wild that the National Hot Rod Association was forced to change its own rules just to keep up. At first glance, the Savoy didn't look dangerous. It had the plain face of a working man's car. Simple body lines, thin chrome trim, and a look that said grocery store more than drag strip. But under that modest skin hid a monster that had no business wearing a Plymouth badge. Engineers took Chrysler's new 413 cubic inch max wedge V8 engine, an engine designed for nothing but destruction, and dropped it into the lightest full-size body they could find. What they created was a street-legal time bomb. The Max Wedge wasn't about comfort or manners. It was built with high-compression pistons, massive ports, twin 4-barrel carburetors, and an exhaust note that could shake windows half a block away. The goal was simple: build a car that could run the quarter-mile faster than anything else on the planet. Straight from the factory floor. To make it even faster, Plymouth stripped the Savoy of every ounce of extra weight. They replaced the hood, fenders, and bumpers with lightweight aluminum pieces. Even the sound insulation was removed. The battery was moved to the trunk for better traction, and the rear suspension was tuned to launch like a rocket. This wasn't a car made for daily driving. It was a factory-built drag racer disguised as a family sedan. When the Savoy 413 hit the tracks, chaos followed. Racers who lined up next to it didn't just lose, they were humiliated. The car was running quarter-mile times in the low 12-second range, which in 1962 was almost unthinkable for something you could technically buy from a dealer. It became clear that Plymouth had bent the definition of stock until it snapped. That's when the National Hot Rod Association stepped in. The Savoy 413 was too quick, too light, and too close to a purpose-built race car. NHRA officials decided it didn't belong in normal stock classes. They reclassified it into factory experimental, a special group created just to handle wild factory builds like the Savoy. In other words, The car was banned from the very category it was meant to dominate. But the ban didn't kill the legend. It made it stronger. The 1962 Plymouth Savoy became a symbol of Detroit's fearless spirit, a time when engineers ignored comfort, cost, and even the rulebook just to prove what raw American muscle could do. The sound of that Max wedge firing up wasn't just the sound of power, it was defiance. It said, "Try to stop me." Today, only a handful of those Savoys survive, each one a living memory of an era when horsepower ruled, and the NHRA struggled to keep up. Every time one of them starts, the air fills with that deep, thunderous growl, the same sound that once shook drag strips across America and forced officials to rewrite the rules. The 1962 Plymouth Savoy 413 Superstock wasn't just a car. It was rebellion in sheet metal form, proof that sometimes the machines built to break the rules are the ones that make history. Car number 5, 1965, AFX Ford Mustang Cammer. The wild Mustang NHRA tried to contain. The crowd fell silent that afternoon at the drag strip. A young man stepped out in a Ford jacket, helmet under his arm, beside a Mustang that didn't sound like any Mustang before it. Its idol wasn't a rumble, it was a growl, deep and alive. No one knew it yet, but they were about to witness a car the NHRA would later try to erase. This was the AFX Mustang, powered by the 427 cubic inch Cammer V8. Ford had watched Dodge and Plymouth dominate the drag strips and wanted revenge. The Cammer, short for single overhead cam, was a monster built to destroy. With long timing chains, special hemispherical heads, and a scream past 8,000 RPM, it was designed to annihilate everything in its path. But the NHRA had already banned it from standard competition before it even raced. Ford found a loophole. They stuffed the Cammer into a lightweight 65 Mustang and called it AFX, Factory Experimental. Comfort, road use, forget it. This was a car built to push Detroit's limits and taunt the rulebook. When it hit the track, the Mustang launched violently, front wheels lifting off the ground. Spectators screamed, photographers dropped cameras, and Ford engineers laughed. Quarter miles disappeared in under 10 seconds. Stock cars couldn't compete. The NHRA didn't know what to do. It wasn't stock, it wasn't modified, it was something completely new and terrifying. Officials acted. The AFX class rules were rewritten. The Cammer was banned from most competitions, but outlawed doesn't mean forgotten. Private racers bought leftover engines, tuned them in secret, and ran them under the radar. The Cammer's roar became a symbol, defiance, power, and freedom. Today, surviving AFX Mustangs are sacred artifacts. Historians call them blueprints of insanity, and old racers still tell stories of the moment the Mustang launched, when man, machine, and madness became one. The 1965 AFX Mustang wasn't just a car. It was Ford's declaration that rules are meant to be tested, limits broken, and sometimes the greatest machines are the ones that get banned. The NHRA could erase it from the record books, but they could never erase the scream of the Cammer. A sound that still echoes in the hearts of true gearheads. And there you have it. 5 muscle cars, so wild, so untamed, that even the NHRA had to step in and say, enough. These machines weren't built for comfort, safety, or logic. They were built for domination. Each one carried the spirit of an era when engineers weren't afraid to break the rules, when power came before policy, and when the roar of an engine was louder than the voice of authority. From the Plymouth Savoy's 413 Superstock Thunder to the Ford Mustang Cammer's Outlaw power, these cars didn't just race. They rebelled. They pushed boundaries, melted tires, and rewrote the definition of what a factory car could be. And even today, decades later, their legend lives on in every burnout, every restoration, and every car enthusiast who still dreams of driving something that's just a little too dangerous, because that's what the true muscle car era was all about. Fearless innovation, raw power and rebellion on 4 wheels. So if you felt that rush, if these untouchable legends lit a fire in you, hit that like button, subscribe to Regal Rides, and ring the bell so you never miss another deep dive into the cars that changed history. And tell us in the comments which of these NHRA banned beasts would you take for one last forbidden run down the strip? This is Regal Rides, where power meets passion, where history roars to life, and where the legends never die.